podcast@afr.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. A new round of peace talks could take place today in Pakistan, though it's not clear if Iranian officials plan to show up. Trey Yingst has more from Tel Aviv.
The ceasefire between the United States and Iran is set to end this week. Vice President J.D. Vance, along with the U.S. delegation, are expected to travel to Islamabad, Pakistan later today for those direct talks, though state media has indicated the Iranian delegation has not yet departed for the conversation. Iran's parliament speaker posted to X overnight saying Trump, by imposing a siege and violating the ceasefire, seeks to turn this negotiating table in his own imagination into a table of surrender or to justify renewed warmongering. President Trump has indicated he's unlikely to extend this ceasefire.
The people of Virginia are voting today on a proposed constitutional amendment. It's about redistricting, and it is the only statewide contest on the ballot for today's special election. Jeff Katz is a radio host in Richmond and said it is a big concern.
6 years ago, by a two-thirds margin, the people of Virginia voted to eliminate partisan gerrymandering. We established an independent commission to do this. And this flies in the face of that. We changed the Constitution to get rid of this. The Virginia Democrats said we don't care, and what would happen is we would go from a 6-5 Democrat margin to a 10-1 Democrat margin.
All eyes are on the investigation into the deaths and disappearances of 11 nuclear and space scientists. NASA now joining the probe as House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer issues a warning about what he thinks is going on.
Well, it does appear that there's a high possibility that something sinister is taking place here. Congress is very concerned about this. Our committee is making this one of our priorities now because we view this as a national security threat.
Former FBI Special Agent Nicole Parker says while the deaths may not all be linked, there is something very strange about those who disappeared.
Of the missing individuals, I think it's odd. None of them had their cell phone. Who leaves their home in this day and age without a cell phone? 2 of them had guns on themselves. I think one of them, her cell phone actually was found and it was factory wiped. It was completely wiped clean. That's a very odd thing to see as an investigator.
This morning, a top medical advocacy group is calling for a Federal Trade Commission probe into the American Psychological Association for allegedly pushing sex changes for children. Dr. Kurt Michelli is the chief medical officer for the group Do No Harm.
This is extraordinarily concerning. We're talking about kids that are confused about their gender. These are young children and adolescents who are vulnerable, some of our most vulnerable members of society, and they're confused about their gender. And they're going to psychologists and medical providers who are putting them on this pathway towards puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries.
Pope Leo's criticism aimed at the U.S. and its involvement in the war with Iran are ruffling feathers of American Catholics who see the comments at odds with what they read in the Bible. Steve Jordahl reports among those is a prominent television personality.
Sean Hannity is leaving the Catholic Church. He says he's been disillusioned for some time.
As of today, I no longer consider myself a Catholic, and while I am a Christian, I left the Catholic Church in large part because of institutionalized corruption, and it was at the parish level, to the bishop level, cardinals, all the way to Rome.
But the recent comments from the Pope on America's war with Iran appear to be the straw that broke the camel's back.
But right on cue, Pope Leo XIV is now seemingly more interested in spreading left-wing politics than the actual teachings of Jesus Christ.
He quotes the Pope as saying God does not bless any conflict and certainly doesn't side with those who drop bombs.
That is simply not biblically accurate. The Bible contains over 400 references to war, frequently depicting God as authorizing, commanding, intervening in battles.
In light of the Pope's comments, people have been looking up his social media history before he was elected pontiff. They're full of woke anti-American rhetoric. Hannity says that makes a lot of sense.
Why is the Pope twisting religion to specifically attack only President Trump and the U.S.? Is it because he's a run-of-the-mill Trump-hating Democrat that lacks moral clarity about radical Islam?
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
At Wesley Biblical Seminary, we believe God is raising up a movement across our nation and around the world who hold fast to the inerrancy of Scripture and the hope of holiness. We do this through bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees, certificate programs, and even training for lay people. So whatever your next step is in being equipped for ministry, we're here for you. And if you believe these are the kind of pastors we need leading churches in the future, we invite you to think about giving to Wesley Biblical Seminary. Learn more about us at wbs.edu.
Jenna Ellis in the morning on American Family Radio.
I love talking about the things of God because of truth and the biblical worldview. The U.S. Constitution obligates our government to preserve and protect the rights that our founders recognize come from God, our Creator, not our government. I believe that Scripture in the Bible is very clear that God is the one that raised up each of you, and God has allowed us to be brought here to this specific moment in time.
This is Jenna Ellis in the morning.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, April 21st, and the Strait of Hormuz is open again, or maybe it isn't, or maybe it is. It's Groundhog Day with the Strait of Hormuz, and I've seen some of the memes are just hilarious. One that was posted was the Google Maps times of opening and closing for the Strait of Hormuz, and that one was really funny. But are oil prices actually coming down, or is that something that is just a myth that is being perpetuated by the GOP because of what one writer is calling Donald Trump's economic reckoning? So this is a piece in the National Interest, and it says, by the time of the midterms, Republicans will have difficulty convincing U.S. voters that the economy has improved. So much for President Trump's promise of the quote-unquote golden economic age of rapid growth, low inflation, soaring manufacturing output, and balanced trade. 15 months into his second term, it appears that the U.S. economy is growing no faster than it did under the Biden administration, despite the tailwinds from the artificial intelligence revolution, which is an interesting perspective, actually. And indeed, the U.S. economy is estimated to have grown a little over 2% in 2025, and the IMF forecasts that it will grow at a similar rate this year. So very different in terms of the economy and the domestic home front than Trump's first term, which was all about, manufacturing, job growth, a soaring economy that, of course, came screeching to a grinding halt with the whole COVID era, which, led then to everything that was disastrous under Joe Biden. But by the time of the midterms, what will voters think about the economy? Well, let's welcome in Jim Nelles, who is a supply chain economist and also a writer in publications that you will have read, including Daily Wire and others. So, Jim, good morning. And what is the forecast for the economy?
Good morning, John. It's great to be with you and your audience today. I think the Republicans just need to go back to school to learn how to communicate, because if you look at what's going on in the economy right now, it's actually pretty darn good. Even in the middle of a war with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz being open and closed, it's kind of like a revolving door like you were talking about earlier. The price of gas is $1 less than it was at its high point under Joe Biden. Oil is down. Stock market futures are up right now. If you look at the grocery store, eggs, milk, butter, vegetable oils, and some poultry is down significantly. We've had issues with beef, but that's more related to some illnesses that we've seen with some of the cows, and actually some of the hangover from the Green New Deal crazy people, because they wanted to have fewer cows in the country. And that'll recover. But what we really need to be doing is telling people that, the economy is doing great. People are spending money. We just need to end this war as quickly as possible and let the president and his people get out there and start having the conversation with the American voter.
Yeah, and that's what I think isn't happening quite to the extent that it probably should, is the conversation. Because right now, if you look at the national perception, regardless of the mainstream media and how, CNN and others are trying to manipulate it, of course, and they always do against President Trump, most people don't feel like the economy is thriving. I mean, they go to the gas pump, they go to the grocery store, they don't really feel like this is the era of economic prosperity. And so if it's true that the economy is soaring, most people don't feel like it, and they certainly don't have that perception. So what is the White House maybe not doing that it should?
So like you and I have talked about in the past, the Democrats are very, very good at messaging. They get their entire side of the aisle focused on the same message, and they repeat it over and over and over again. And it's usually nothing more than 5 to 7 words that it makes a really nice soundbite on TV. Republicans, for some reason, can't hire the right communications directors to do that. They need a consistent message. They can't afford to do what the mistake Biden made, which was telling people life is great. You just aren't smart enough to know it. But they need to come out and show the facts. Gas is down from where it was under Joe Biden. The price of eggs is down, et cetera, et cetera. Once this war is over, here's how we're going to drive down the cost of gas at the pump even further. Before the war started, when it was adjusted for inflation, gas was at its lowest rate in 25 years. So it was actually doing pretty well. The messaging is just absolutely horrible, and it's something that the Republicans have struggled with for generations.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, the messaging, I think, from his first term was overall remarkably better. And, a lot of the press conferences and things that he held, and, he would go places like Michigan, and stand in the middle of the factory floor and talk about, the economic prosperity and bringing manufacturing back to America. And a lot of these visuals were really appealing, I think, to the American people. And so it seems like in the second term, he's almost playing more defense than offense. Yes. And I wonder if that is specifically a choice, or whether this conflict in Iran and the tangential consequences of it, which include some of the at least the perception, if not the reality on the economic consequences, play into that. And if it would be a better strategy to look at going more on offense instead of defense, but not in a way that, he's done on Truth Social. Some of the bombastic posts I'm not really sure are helpful.
It's funny. I quote my friend Ben Shapiro all the time, saying that if someone could just take his phone away from him for 5 days, the entire perception of America would change. But, in all seriousness, if I was advising Trump on his strategy from now until the midterms, he needs to be back out on the road. He needs to be wearing that reflective vest, riding around in a dump truck, a garbage truck. He needs to be serving pizzas and serving hamburgers at different locations. He needs to go to traditionally Democratic strongholds like black and brown neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago and talk to them about how crime is at its lowest rate in America in a long, long time, and how that means that they don't have to spend as much time worrying about their children being shot on the way home from school. And then I think the other thing he needs to do is start pointing out the craziness of the Democrat Party. Look at who these people are electing now. You've got the Zohan in New York City. You've got this crazy woman that they just elected in New Jersey, and it looks like they're going to send a senator from Michigan who makes both of them look like they're rational human beings. We need to be pointing this stuff out to the people, saying, is this really what you want? The good news is that while these super leftist Democrats win at the local and state level, none of them, thank God, have been able to pull through and break through at the national level. I don't think they will. Because if you think about it, America is a pretty centrist country, right? We're plus or minus 3 degrees from center for 90 to 95% of the population. People don't want crazy. And we need to be pointing out the crazy of the other side to make that a talking point, along with how well the economy is doing, jobs are doing, crime is doing, et cetera.
Yeah, well, you and Ben Shapiro are not the first to suggest that someone should take away his phone, but believe me, we tried in the first administration. Nobody can do it, or at least nobody's been successful yet.
I would not want that job, not for $1 million, love, or money.
Oh, I know. I mean, a friend of mine and I who worked together on, in his first term now say, wow, we look at some of the comms and just say, wow, hallelujah, not our problem. We can talk about it from just a rational perspective, not a, necessarily White House centric defending the president's standpoint. And that's a much better position to be in for sure. But when it comes to, the crazy of the Democrat Party, I think you're absolutely spot on, Jim Nelles, because, most people at the end of the day, while they care about politics and the kind of media propaganda cycle wants us to be sucked in to these different personalities and, some of these petty fights in Congress and, all of this stuff. At the end of the day, what people really just want is to be able to live their lives in peace, be able to afford a home, be able to afford gas and groceries, make decisions for themselves and their families, and, literally just live out the American dream. And then when you have people like, for example, James Tallarico out of Texas, who just, clip after clip is just wild, absurd nonsense. It makes you wonder how somebody like that actually rose to prominence and now has the nomination of the Democrat Party in Texas for the Senate. And you're thinking, why aren't more Republicans pointing this out and saying, man, you think that AOC has been crazy. You don't want a James Tallarico in the Senate. No. And pointing that out more, it seems like the Republicans are always playing defense instead of offense. And I'm not sure that's a good strategy for the midterms, especially.
No, it's not. Offense is going to beat defense every day of the week. I look at the craziness that's happening in my hometown of Chicago right now. They want to close the schools on May 1st to teach the students how to go protest. They want to do a day of social justice in schools leading up to May 1st, where they'll be teaching kids as young as preschool about gender-affirming care, quote unquote, right, which I call childhood mutilation. It was the parents in the poor neighborhoods that were like, what the heck are you guys doing? Our kids can't read and write at grade level, and you want to go teach them how to protest and not teach them how to do basic math? No. And the parents fought back. What I think we're seeing with a lot of the crazy is that we have one or two generations of voters who were indoctrinated in these left-wing universities, and they believe that socialism is great. They believe that taxing the quote-unquote rich just for the sake of taxing the quote-unquote rich is a great idea because, heck, where's my money, right? Why do And, you see the Zohan in New York City doxing the private residence of a multi-billionaire because he thinks he should pay more in taxes. That's completely insane. And those things need to be pointed out. These commercials write themselves if they just take the time to stop fighting amongst themselves, stop some of the circular firing squads that we're seeing on the right now, and focus on the message of the left is crazy, life is actually pretty darn good. Do you want to go and become Venezuela? It's a 20-second ad that could be really, really easy to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the Republicans overall, not even just specific candidates, but the White House in general, is going to have a better marketing comms strategy heading into the midterms. And, we're already at late April. This is getting into the thick of it as well. And so in just the last few minutes I have with you, Jim Nelles, going back just to the economy as well, not just the messaging. Is there a long-term economic doctrine here? Or, because I think we saw more cohesion in Trump's first term as well than we're seeing now, at least from the perception of his transactional brokering. And so are we seeing a continuation, do you think, from the first term, or is this a little bit different when it's an approach to the economy?
I think it's a bit different. And, Jenna, you've known President Trump for a long time. He's on most issues, he's a pragmatist, right? He has an opinion. He floats some ideas. He sees what people think. He listens to input. And then he's very happy to change his mind. With some of the things he's done in his second term, he has been adamant about it. Look at the tariffs. Now, I kind of agree that the tariffs had to be done. I don't like the way in which they were done, and I don't like the back and forth because it created uncertainty, and uncertainty allowed the supply base in places like Asia to say, I'm not going to lower my prices to you because next week it's going to be different. But, that's something that I think caused a lot of uncertainty in the U.S., and that hurts with manufacturing. I actually think that it was a bit of a mistake to try to make America into a manufacturing powerhouse. We never were. If you look at the history of the United States, our highest percent of GDP that came from a domestic manufacturing was right around 22, 23% in 1979. We've always been an agricultural and then a service economy. And I think, Trump's embracement of the way he embraces AI has been fantastic. I think that's going to drive a lot of growth and a lot of jobs. But if you look at what the crazies in the Congress are doing, the squad and Bernie Sanders, they're putting forward bills to stop the building of any new data centers because they don't want AI. They're convinced that AI is going to become this Terminator type thing that's going to, haunt us all and kill us all. And if you look historically, again, technology has always created more jobs than it's ever killed. We need to embrace that. I think Trump's messaging on that is very good, but he just needs to get back to jobs, energy independence. Those things will drive down costs, and that'll make the American people happy. I think we still have time. We have plenty of time until the midterms. I don't remember what I was doing 6 months ago, but I guarantee you people won't remember much of what happened in April of 2026 when they go to vote in November, as long as this war is behind us and the price of oil is in the low 70s, we'll be okay.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Wise words, Jim Nelles. We've got to take a break here, but there is a lot of time in the news cycle. I mean, even a couple of weeks in this 24-hour news cycle, a lot can shift in terms of public perception. And yet the White House and Republicans overall, if they want to keep the trifecta, are going to have to capitalize on that and have some kind of a coherent strategy. And it just really doesn't seem like they are focused on that or focused, at all on legislation that the American people want. At least President Trump is focused on the economy and America first and fulfilling the agenda that he genuinely believes will bring about the golden age. So I have a lot more confidence in President Trump than Congress, but we need both, especially Congress, to do their job. So you can follow Jim Nelles on X, and we will be right back with more.
Hi, I'm Doug Chamberlain, host of Family Health Checkup. For over 30 years, Samaritan members have come together to share medical costs and lift each other up in prayer. Now, I'm excited to tell you about Redeem Health Share Ministry, Samaritan's next generation of healthcare sharing. Redeem offers affordable, flexible programs that reflect your values and help you manage medical costs with confidence. Each month, members contribute a share amount to help pay each other's medical bills, and you choose the providers and treatments that are right for your family. It's not insurance, it's a community of believers supporting one another through life's health challenges. So, whether it's a routine visit or a sudden emergency, there's a caring Christian community walking with you every step of the way. Redeem Health Share. It's more than healthcare. It's hope. It's healing. It's faith in action. Call 1-844-REDEEM-0 today. Join the movement. Share joyfully. Live redeemed.
How about this? Some actual good news on the healthcare front, even as costs just keep skyrocketing. So if you're 65 or older, MediShare now offers MediShare 65 Plus. Call them. You can talk to them about this. A lot of people are taking advantage of this now because even if you have Medicare Parts A and B, there are out-of-pocket things, deductibles and copays that just keep going up. And the whole point is to help you by giving you a low, consistent monthly payment that fills in the gaps. In fact, I can tell you how much MediShare 65 Plus is. For example, it's $99 a month up to age 75. It keeps costs under control. That helps with peace of mind. MediShare is trusted, too. It's been around for 30 years, and it's a community of people who help each other. Business owners, retirees, pastors, teachers. People love being part of it. Here's the number you can call now. They are easy to talk to. Call 833-45-BIBLE. That's 833-45-BIBLE. 833-45-BIBLE.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes. Stand by for news and commentary next. A bit of controversy regarding school lunches. It's a survey about whether pork should be removed from school menus out of respect for Muslim students. Now, the question a bit dubious, but it turns out at least one school district in America has already addressed the issue. All of the food served in public cafeterias in Dearborn, Michigan, now compliant with Islamic law. Back in 2019, the school district celebrated its new menu, saying serving halal meat was not really just about religion. They say halal food is actually healthier than what the Protestants eat. Portland, Oregon also serves halal meals for students, and New York City has a halal food program dedicated exclusively to serve Muslim kids. Now, whether or not this trend grows remains to be seen, but I sincerely doubt the southern states would comply. Folks in Memphis, Tennessee, for example, would rather secede from the union rather than give up their pork butts. I'm Todd Starnes.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. Well, talking about the economy and also where Congress is in all this, the messaging of the GOP, the messaging of the Democrat Party, because obviously both sides want to prevail in the midterms. The Democrats want to prevail so that they can just make trouble and probably a lot of impeachments for Trump and his associates in the administration after the midterms. And then, of course, Republicans hopefully actually want to prevail in keeping power so that they can get things done, although I don't know that that's really the top of their agenda. But one of the things that they really need to do is talk about the One Big Beautiful Bill. I mean, that's been really the only major signature piece of legislation that expressly deals with the economy coming out of this Congress. So why aren't we hearing more about that? Well, let's welcome in Paul Teller, who's the president of Teller Strategies and one of the foremost intellectuals in D.C. I've been privileged to know him for quite a long time and always has really excellent advice. And so, Paul, what's your view on where we're at in the economy and why the Republicans, it seems like the GOP is not really talking about the One Big Beautiful Bill as it relates to the necessity of winning the midterms?
Well, first of all, good morning. Thanks. It's always great to be with you. And I don't know what I owe that great compliment you just gave me to, but, I'll take it. Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
It's true.
Yes. I thank you again. And just in terms of why Republicans seem to not be talking about One Big Beautiful Bill, I think some of it is, and I hate to say it because, they were trying here, but they were trying to rebrand the law, right? Everyone knows it as a One Big Beautiful Bill. And they decided that for some reason that branding is not sufficient, not great. I don't know what it doesn't convey anything in the exact title. So they've rebranded it as the Working Families Tax Cut Act. And I just think that has totally confused folks. It's confused probably themselves. It certainly confused the general public because it's like, wait, is that the same as the One Big Beautiful Bill? Is it different? Also, I don't know about you, but Working Families Tax Cuts, it's so boring, that branding, and I don't mean any insult to anyone who came up with it. It's like straight out of 1985, and it just, I don't know. I was very confused why Republicans would give up on a really funny, ear-catching brand, One Big Beautiful Bill, right? President Trump did a beautiful job in naming that, and why run away from that? Now, the thing is, maybe part of it also is that it is a complex law, right? There's a lot in there. And so maybe just members don't feel comfortable talking about it because they don't exactly know what they voted for, to enact. The one thing that I would point to is a group that I'm doing some work with and that I helped build up for many years, Advancing American Freedom. That's the Mike Pence issue advocacy group. They actually recently put out a booklet highlighting 60 of the top provisions in that law. And you may say, oh, my God, that's so many things. But here's the thing. They broke it down into one page per provision. So you could just focus in on the one thing you need to talk about maybe on a radio show or on a town hall with your friends, with your angry liberal relatives, whatever it is. You could grab a one page at a time and just focus in easily on a single provision and do it, of course, over and over, as depending on how many provisions you need to focus on. But it's really useful. They call it the One Big Beautiful Booklet because, again,
that's amazing.
You could use it in its entirety, all 60 things put together, or just, grab one page, 2 pages, 3 pages, and just highlight some of the things that speak to you in your immediate needs.
Yeah, and that makes sense to break it down that way, and especially with the data tools that we have, a lot of this AI that will break it down and say, okay, here are some of the key provisions. I mean, that's basically what this booklet has done. It seems like it would have been strategic starting this year for the the Republicans and the GOP to basically take one topic per week, and then they couldn't even get through 60 of them before the midterms, and focus on that in terms of media and have some coordinated messaging. I mean, this really isn't that complicated, and you're absolutely right. I mean, President Trump, he names everything so well and is one of the best comm strategists, or if not the best, in DC and in the business, and so everybody knows one big beautiful bill. But if they talk about working families tax cuts, it's like, well, I'm not feeling it, or maybe, well, right. I'm not a family yet, or that does this apply to me, or that's not really relatable. And so when it comes to things like the economy and where we're at with gas prices, where we're at with food prices, where we're at with tax cuts, maybe we just I don't think celebrated is the right word. Tax day went through begrudgingly. Tax
endured,
day endured. Yeah, that would have been a great moment to talk more about. Is President Trump actually going to and Congress actually going to reduce taxes? We haven't heard anything about that since last year. I mean, why not?
Yeah, and you know what? And to her credit, by the way, Congresswoman Lisa McClain out of Michigan, she's the House Republican Conference chairwoman. She really is trying to get this messaging out. In fact, she's called in, conservative leaders and activists, and I know her fellow members of Congress, to say, okay, here's messaging on the one big beautiful bill. Here are some ways to break it down. So she is absolutely trying. Full credit to her. I think what again has been tough is that mixed message with one big beautiful bill, working families tax cut. That's one thing. But two, and let's face it, this is not her fault or really anyone's fault, but there's just so much going on in the news in any given week, right? Whether it's the shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security, TSA agents not getting paid, the Iran war, you name it, reconciliation, all of that, I'm sure we'll talk about. It's probably as hard to break through talking about a law that's, a year old or almost a year old at that point. And so I give them some, grace that, it is hard to break through. But having said that, that's, again, coming back to that one big beautiful booklet that Advancing American Freedom put out. That's why they broke it down into one-pagers, because you don't have to explain the whole law at once. Pick one provision and talk about it with every speech you give, right? Or every radio hit you do, every TV hit you do. Grab a one-pager out of the booklet. You could even physically rip it out, because they have physical copies too, and bring it up to the podium or wherever you're going and tout even just one provision each time. Because I think right now members are comfortable saying, well, no tax on tips. That was in there. True, but let's face it, most Americans are not earning tips, so that doesn't speak to a lot of Americans. So there's got to be more that they talk about than just no tax on tips.
Yeah, they got to take this kind of esoteric concept of the one big beautiful bill and then distill it down to say this is actually the application that benefits you and this particular segment or demographic that they're speaking to. And that would be really helpful. But, that would actually require them to do their homework and maybe stop, fighting on social media and actually get business done. But you mentioned, right? Yeah, not likely to happen. But you mentioned reconciliation, and that was exactly where I was going next, because The Hill, the publication The Hill, is their headline is "The Senate Takes First Step on Reconciliation 2.0." So the Senate is expected to vote as early as this week on a budget blueprint for a second reconciliation bill that includes funding for ICE and Border Patrol. But Senate Majority Leader John Thune will likely have to appease hardline conservatives in his caucus who demand that the bill be broader than the quote-unquote skinny package he's pushing for. So where is Congress at with reconciliation?
No, you're exactly right. And, again, for your listeners, they're very well educated, but just in case, just to remind folks, so reconciliation is just that fancy Washington word for how to get something through the Senate fast, expedited procedures. It only needs 51 votes instead of 60. There's no filibuster, all that kind of stuff. And there's all kinds of fancy rules that go along with it. So it's not like you could just stuff anything into reconciliation that you want and pass it with 51 votes. It's certain types of things. And so that's what, especially House conservatives, some Senate conservatives, but, conservatives in general in Congress are saying. They're like, well, I don't know if we could fund what they want to fund, regarding immigration enforcement using this reconciliation procedure. It opens up, without getting into the gory details, it opens up and sets a precedent that could be used against conservatives in the future, where when liberals, control the Congress, maybe one day they could use it to stick their priorities into this expedited procedure. So it's a little questionable. There's also this whole thing of the parliamentarian who is kind of the rule referee, if you will, in the Senate. And sometimes she will knock certain things out and say, nope, that can't go in there. Nope, that's not allowed to be in there. And it's not always certain what she's going to knock out and what she's going to keep in. And so some conservatives are saying that Republican leaders want to include things that are likely to be knocked out. That's not great. And then on top of that, because, it's probably this is the only bullet in the gun to fire this year, meaning like this is the one last chance Congress will get to do a reconciliation bill, expedited procedures bill. Why should we just have it be skinny and just have a couple little provisions? Let's get a lot of good things in there to further cut taxes, further cut spending. And you ready for this one? This is the one that really kills me as a pro-lifer. There is a current law provision defunding Planned Parenthood. It actually was in the one big, beautiful bill, believe it or not. That expires on Independence Day, on July 4th. So as of July 5th, of this year, Planned Parenthood will get a new wave of taxpayer funding right now, like under the Republican Congress, unless they stop it. And they can stop it using this reconciliation procedure. So conservatives are saying, put that in there too. Why have it just be a small, narrow bill when we can get lots of priorities in there? That's kind of the fight right now in Congress.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, and that's exactly what they did with the one big beautiful bill. It's like, if we're going to pass one major piece of legislation, let's put everything in there that we need and that we want. So it doesn't really make sense, in my opinion, for pushing, for Leader Thune to be pushing for the skinny package rather than senators like Ted Cruz and others that are hoping to tack on, defense funding, some of the funding to cover ICE and Border Patrol, some of these other things. But as you mentioned, critically, the Planned Parenthood defunding, and is that being seriously contemplated, or is that something that just conservatives are hoping for but not really on the table?
It's a good question. Let's put it this way. We think it's still on the table. I mean, some Republican leaders have said, hey, guys, I don't think we can get this in there. It's got opposition. Not sure I have the votes, blah, 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 blah. But our feeling is, let's at least give it a shot. We have to fight because what a bad thing it would send. What a bad signal it would send, right, to pro-life activists across the nation right in the middle of an election year, with primaries still going on and everything, that, hey, Republicans will be okay with kind of an additional funding to Planned Parenthood right in the middle of the election year. I mean, that just would seem like a real downer, if you will. So our view is at least give it a shot. Put it in there, and if somehow folks fight to pull it out or vote it down or whatever, we could talk about that later, but at least give it a shot. And that's it seems very reasonable.
Yeah, and why is it that the default position is having to re-up defunding instead of a default position that Congress would have to vote for funding?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And it's a good question. In fact, during the One Big Beautiful Bill last year, again, I don't understand why, but Republican leaders really only asked for a one-year defund of Planned Parenthood. They claim that's all they could pass, and that anything longer than that wouldn't have passed. I don't know. That seems hard to believe, right? If 1 year passes, why doesn't 2 years pass or more? Right. And again, it goes back to let's give it a shot. They never really tried, as far as we can tell, which I know is, sometimes difficult, right? As leaders, you got to know where the votes are. I get that. But man, let's wage a fight. Let's push it. And if we have to, retreat a little bit, okay, that's how it goes. How negotiation goes when you go to a car dealer, right? You walk in and you ask for the sunroof and you ask for 0% financing and anything like that. And if the dealer says, I can give you 0% financing, but not the sunroof, okay, you backtrack and you see what you can get. Same thing here.
You got more than if you didn't ask at all. Yeah.
That's right. But a lot of times our own Republican leaders don't really start with a maximum ask. They kind of self-negotiate themselves down to a lower ask to begin with. And then, of course, the Democrats negotiate them even further away. So, I mean, it's just not a great tactic.
No, it's pathetic. And, we were sold initially on only 1 year of the defunding because we were promised that Congress would use that year and Republicans would use that year to come back and push for more defunding for a longer term because, 1 year, okay, great. But if they didn't follow up on that and then the leadership isn't even pushing for this, then the 1 year really was just a drop in the bucket. But is Mike Johnson at least on the House side pushing for this, even if Leader Thune is not?
I think they're actually both in similar places that in their heart of hearts, I believe they would want to do this. So that's not the question. It's just a matter of where they feel the votes are and where the pressure points should be and where the efforts should be. And from what I've seen thus far, Speaker Johnson is not putting a lot of gusto into trying to keep that provision in for Planned Parenthood defunding. So I hate to say it because we know he's a pro-lifer at his heart, but not using those beliefs to push this fight in this moment, or so it seems. So that's why we're hoping pro-life groups and other activists will speak up and convey that to Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, and others in Congress.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate you bringing this to our listeners' attention because that's something that we can all do, is call Speaker Johnson's office, call Leader Thune's office, ask them about these provisions and specifically push that from just a constituency standpoint. So that's the action item for listeners today because I know our audience is absolutely one of the key and core issues for our AFA family is pro-life. And so what's the time frame on reconciliation, and how long would they have to potentially add this provision if they're going to?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess really the only deadline at this exact moment is that July 4th deadline when the defunding of Planned Parenthood expires, where, Planned Parenthood will get an infusion of new cash literally on Independence Day. I mean, the irony of all ironies there, right? So that's the only real deadline. Other than that, Congress has to first go through some procedural hoops, jump through some hoops to get this reconciliation provision going. They have to pass a budget resolution, for example, give instructions to certain committees of what to do. Again, it's all the Washington mumbo jumbo, but that is how the procedure works and stuff like that. And so because there's certain hurdles and hoops to jump through, you kind of got to get going. These things take longer than you might think. So while there's not an urgency to do it, let's say today or anything like that, we gotta really keep moving because we're coming up on May. As soon as you look at holidays that are already built in, like Memorial Day week and of course the July 4th week, that deadline's going to come up real fast. So that's a long way of saying we got to get going real soon.
Yeah, so that's the action item is to call our leaders and tell them that we want this pro-life provision and the defunding of Planned Parenthood, and we can use our voices. And because that's what the Democrats love to do is just run out the clock. And so when we're in a situation where Congress has to act in order to prevent funding rather than act in order to get funding. I mean, if that were the case, then Democrats would be pushing this, of course, daily. But we really need to force the Republicans to actually vote the way that they promise, because we're supposed to be the conservative, pro-life agenda party, and they need to go along with that. So Paul Teller, really appreciate it. You can follow him on X at @PTeller, and we will be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
Life can be hard, but we have to keep our eyes focused on Jesus. I'm Christy Graham, host of On the Ground with Samaritan's Purse, and I want to encourage you in your walk with God. Listen each week as we go behind the scenes of our work around the world. You'll be challenged and encouraged in your own faith as you hear how God is actively changing lives. Join us for On the Ground with Samaritan's Purse, Sundays at 8:30 a.m. Central, right here on American Family Radio.
On Exploring Missions, you'll hear missionaries like Colin McDougall of Africa Inland Missions.
Yesu ndimi njia na ukweli na uzima. Yohana 14:6.
What did he say?
Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. John 14:6.
Colin learned a new language to minister to the people of Africa.
That's right. We're mostly working on the east and also in the north of Africa.
Saturday afternoons at 2:30 Central on American Family Radio.
Hey, it's Michael Woolworth with Bible League International. Well, we just celebrated Easter only weeks ago, right? How many of us have drawn comfort and strength from the resurrection story in John 20 where the two Marys go to the tomb, right? And they hear that Jesus is not there. He's risen just as he said. You know, the Christians we're talking about now have never read a single verse in their own Bibles. People like Yusuf, a cobbler in Pakistan, praying for his very own Bible after being shunned by his Muslim family when he became a believer. Also, Rosalia, a former witch doctor in Paraguay in South America. She's a new believer praying for a Bible again. This is the spring season, and we want to bless 4,000 Bibleless believers around the world by the end of April. We're a little short of that goal, so please, at $5 a Bible, $100 since $20, $500 will put Bibles into the empty waiting hands of 100 waiting believers. Would you call 800 Yes Word? 800 Yes Word. That's 800 Yes Word. Or give at sendbiblesnow.org. That's sendbiblesnow.org.
America was founded as a nation under God, but the U.S. Supreme Court has broken our national relationship with God. Many court rulings have contributed, but three stand out. In 1962, the court removed prayer from public schools. In 1963, the court removed Bible reading from public schools. And lastly, in 1980, the court removed the Ten Commandments from America's classrooms. The Supreme Court broke our relationship with God, and any restoration of that relationship must include the Supreme Court. And a vacancy on the Supreme Court could soon be coming. So please support AFA Action's urgent legal work to help President Trump select and the U.S. Senate confirm godly constitutional justices for the Supreme Court. We put thousands of hours of research into potential nominees. We use our networks at the Trump administration and the U.S. Senate to promote the good nominees and oppose the bad ones. AFA Action needs the resources of supporters like you to help maximize our efforts. So please visit afaaction.net to learn more and donate today.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. Well, there's a new report out from the House Judiciary GOP dealing with potential fraud at Act Blue, which is the Democrats' primary fundraising platform, similar to Win Red on the Republican side. And according to the House GOP, this new report says that Act Blue employees took the fifth when asked about foreign fraud and whistleblower retaliation at the Democrat donation platform. So the House GOP and the GOP oversight committees have been investigating fraud on Act Blue and the potential for foreign interference in our elections. Last year, they say we found that Act Blue, the left's leading online fundraising platform, weakened its fraud prevention standards ahead of the 2024 election, even as the company knew about significant attempted fraud on the platform. So let's welcome in Congressman Jim Jordan, who is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. And it just seems like Democrats are totally okay with fraud implicit in literally everything that they do. This is so unacceptable.
Well, I think the irony is not lost on anyone either. That they've been saying for years, President Trump and Russian collusion and the election and interfered with the election, which is all BS. But here it looks like they were the ones potentially taking foreign donations. So, remember a couple key facts here, Jenna. First of all, Act Blue is the money machine behind the Democrat Party. They raise billions every election cycle. After the 24 election cycle, four of their top people, their top people in the fraud division resigned, and then their general counsel was fired. The general counsel was given a big severance package, but had to sign some agreement saying anything you say publicly or to anyone first has to be okayed by Act Blue. So those five individuals were the five that we brought in for depositions, and they all took the fifth. They would not answer key questions about foreign contributions and about what was going on at Act Blue. So you take all that information and then you add to it the final step, which is we now just learned that a letter that was sent by Chairman Brian Stile, of the House Administration Committee a few years ago, the response that was given back from Act Blue to Congress looks like they weren't telling the truth. And we know that because one of their lawyers had sent a letter to Act Blue saying, hey, we don't think what you wrote, what you responded, how you responded to the Congress was accurate, which is a nice way of saying you lied to Congress, which you're not allowed to do. And by the way, that law firm and that lawyer that law firm was Covington. The lawyer was Dana Remus. And Dana Remus was not just any old lawyer. She was the former White House counsel for President Biden. So they had a Democrat lawyer who told them, we don't think you're honest with Congress. So that's the situation, and that's why we're continuing to dig into this and find out what we can.
Wow. And so the reporting is confirming that ActBlue accepts illegal foreign donations in mass, and then they tried to cover this up by misleading and withholding documents from Congress or outright lying and then also refusing to testify. So where's the accountability?
Well, the Justice Department's looking into this. All we can do is oversight. We can get the facts, do oversight. I get this question all the time when I'm traveling around the country. You were politer when a little more polite when you asked the question, because sometimes I'll be out and about and people will say to me, "Hey, Jordan, when's someone going to jail? We're tired of all the investigations, no one being held accountable." So I get that, but only the Justice Department can indict someone. And they are looking at this situation. We're going to continue to dig into it and find out what we can and make that news available. So, and then if we need to do some reform in the law, of course, that's where the legislative branch comes in. We can propose new legislation. But the Justice Department is looking into the situation as well.
Okay, and what's your view of Todd Blanche, who's now, the acting AG?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are concerned. He's formerly a Democrat. I'm not super concerned about that. I think he's a great lawyer, but a lot of people aren't as aware of him and his background than someone like a Pam Bondi, for example.
I think Todd's doing a tremendous job. I've gotten to know him over the last year and have been very impressed. He was Deputy Attorney General, doing a great job running the agency and running the Justice Department, and now as AG, I think he'll continue to do outstanding work. And so, what I do know too is the difference between dealing with the Garland Justice Department and dealing with the Blanche and the Bondi Justice Department has been just night and day. We have questions, we have information we need to get to them, or questions we have or information we want from them. It's been so good to work with them. But Todd's doing a great job, and I think he'll be an outstanding Attorney General.
That's great, and that's good to hear. And I hope that the DOJ will confront some of this accountability that's necessary, and that the American people, frankly, voted for in re-electing President Trump. I mean, lawfare has been a huge topic for all of the Republican base, and to your point about Congress being able just to legislate, have there been any advances on at least trying to curtail some of this lawfare? Because my concern is, somebody who was targeted, I mean, you've been targeted by, various aspects of lawfare as well, that if the Democrats get back into power, that's going to be their agenda, is that they're going to want to come after every conservative they possibly can with lawfare. And that needs to be cut off, not just through going to the Supreme Court and basically begging for the right outcome.
Yeah, one of the pieces of legislation we've passed out of our committee. Now, we need to get this passed on the floor, but this is this non-disclosure fairness issue. And if you remember, the Arctic Frost investigation and the special counsel went and got a bunch of us members of Congress, went and got our cell records, our cell phone calls, and who we called, when we called them, how long the call lasted, all that information, which was they did it for me for 2.5 years. So one of the things we've said is, in the future, if you're going to go get people's information and you go to the judge and say, Judge, you get the judge to tell the carrier, AT&T or Verizon, that you can't notify your customer that the government just went and got their records. We've said in legislation, we want that non-disclosure. We want that to be reasonable. It can't go on for years like they did to members of Congress. And our bill doesn't just talk about members of Congress. It talks about all Americans, which is how I think obviously we should make laws, of course, not just for some special group, but for all Americans. It says, A, there's a higher standard for getting a non-disclosure or for getting the records. And then B, you can't go for months and months and months and months and not tell the customer, not tell the American that the government has went to your carrier and got your phone log. So that's a good bill. We think it protects people. So that's one of the things we're doing to help deal with this. But ideally, the best way to stop this is to highlight it and show that what took place, and hopefully, and people who've done wrong, hold them accountable. I do think John Brennan's I think the Justice Department is getting ready to indict John Brennan in the Southern District of Florida for his role in this, what I would call a conspiracy to go after the president clear back 10 years ago when this all started. So that's how you, I think, change it, and those things are happening.
Yeah, and there was also, you were on Newsmax recently talking about D&I Gabbard is sending some criminal referrals to the DOJ as well, and it looks like that included James Comey potentially for some of the other issues that he was involved in, and maybe some others. So hopefully these criminal referrals will be acted upon by the DOJ, but it really comes down to accountability and whether this DOJ will actually follow through. And obviously, I've been a staunch advocate that this isn't just kind of an eye for an eye, like go after them because they came after us. I mean, you have to have a legal basis and substantially, not just this pretext, like they came after all conservatives. But there's plenty there. I mean, that's the difference, is that the Democrats and some of these bad actors, going back, like you said, 10 years ago, I mean, clearly we're targeting President Trump, committed illegal activities, and they seem to be just fine. And I think that's where the American people have a problem with it, because it's not just we want to go after them because they're Democrats. It's that we genuinely want them to pay for their actions.
That's why this investigation into the conspiracy that took place 10 years ago, in my judgment, and the possible indictments of these folks in the Southern District of Florida, I think is so important. We don't do many criminal referrals from the Judiciary Committee. We only do it if the facts are there. And we did one for John Brennan because we know he lied to us. And we know he lied to us because last summer there have been multiple times where Tulsi Gabbard and Director Ratcliffe have declassified and released information. Last summer they did. And that information clearly showed that what John Brennan told us about the dossier and things relative to 2016 and 2017 were not accurate. So we sent a referral to the Justice Department, and as I said before, I think they're going after him. Understand what took place, and I think this is so important because this is when it started. After President Trump gets elected in 2016, there's an intelligence community assessment. It's a report, and it talked about Russia and the election. And that report said Russia didn't really care who won the election. They were just doing the normal stuff they always do, trying to tinker around with elections. John Brennan, after a meeting in the White House, John Brennan is the key player in changing that report. So from what it says in December of 2016, January of 2017, it says something different, and it says, no, Russia wanted Trump to win, and they were working to help that happen, which was not the case. So, and they used the dossier as part of the key basis for changing the report, even though they had people in the intelligence community tell them the dossier is garbage. It's baloney. And there was one document we got where it's related that one of the key people in the intelligence community told Director Brennan, they said, you can't use the dossier. It just doesn't hold up. And Brennan's response was, yeah, but doesn't it ring true? Demonstrating his bias that he was out to get the president. I don't care what the facts are. We're going to go after the president. We're going to use the dossier as the basis to change the report. And that became the predicate for the whole Mueller investigation. So that's when it started, and that's why this guy needs to be held accountable.
Well, thank you very much for that criminal referral and for your committee at least having the principles to go after that. And even though it is a rare instance, it clearly is warranted in this case. And so, thank you for that. And hopefully the DOJ will follow up on that. And in just the last few minutes I have with you, Congressman Jim Jordan, and everyone should follow him on X and also the House Judiciary GOP page so that you can get a lot of this information and alerts that, the mainstream media, at least the leftist side, of course, is not going to cover things like the Act Blue employees and foreign fraud. But where are we at with the Save America Act? Because this is, I think, a signature piece of legislation that again, was part of the Trump mandate. People want safe and secure elections. And this is something that is necessary, especially in the outflow of what we've seen throughout the course of Democrats targeting President Trump and elections.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just one more example of, the old line that the Democrats are, it's normal versus crazy. It's common sense versus crazy. It's crazy not to be, not to show your ID when you go to vote. It's one of the many positions the Democrats take that just don't make any sense. So I couldn't agree more. It'd be nice if we could get this into law. I know the Senate is dealing with multiple things now. We'll see if they come back to this whole talking filibuster that's been discussed. We'll see if they do that. But yeah, this is so common sense. And what is it, like 90-some% of the country thinks you should have to show an ID if you're gonna when you show up to vote. So we'll just have to see. Hopefully we can get it done, and maybe we can look to put it on some some other bill and have it right along on some must-pass piece of legislation. So I know we're looking at all those things.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Congressman Jim Jordan, for your consistent push for conservative principles, values, accountability, and all of the work that you do. Always appreciate you dropping by to give us an update. And as always, you can reach me and my team, Jenna, at afr.net.